or good afternoon, depending on what part of the country you're tuning in from. We are very excited that you're joining us today for our information session about the Library Innovation Lab, a professional development and cohort learning experience for library staff who want to better welcome immigrants to public libraries in the United States. This is a program that's been running since 2018 here in California, and today's session is going to tell you everything you need to know about applying, what it might be like to be part of the cohort. You'll also get to hear from two of our wonderful mentors who have done this program themselves and are staff at public libraries in California. About the programs they developed and the lessons they learned through this program. Patty and Eric, thank you. The way this session will work is we'll be online for just over an hour. We have an hour 15 today. We want to hear from you. We want to talk with you. There'll be several Q&A breaks. If you have a question, you can put it into the Q&A box, and we will get to it and call on you. And if you have questions after the session, which is being recorded, you are very encouraged to follow up with myself or Felicia Kelly, who leads and started this program, or Brett Connor, our manager. We're all here to talk after and during. So first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Kirsten Vega. I'm a program officer at California Humanities, and I've been working on Library Innovation Lab for 5 years now, alongside my dear colleague, Felicia Kelly, Project and Evaluation Director. We're also joined by Brett Connor, who is the grants manager at California Humanities and knows all of your eligibility questions and queries and payment technical questions. Brett can always help out. We also have, I'm sorry you're not on here, Beth Segura, operations manager, who can help with any technical problems by email, etc. if you have questions during the webinar. And as I mentioned, Eric Cardoso and Patty Malari, mentors of Library Innovation Lab, hailing from the Long Beach Public Library and San Leandro Public Library. And they'll tell you all about that in just a few minutes. You'll get to hear about their work on this program. Yes, so here's the flow today. We'll tell you more about Library Innovation Lab. Felicia and I have prepared an overview for you. We'll take your questions. Eric and Patty will talk, and then we'll do a more technical breakdown of how, exactly how you'd fill out an application and what timeline you would expect to hear back and what timeline of meetings you would expect to participate in if you join the cohort next year. So first of all, California Humanities, if you're not familiar with us, we're what's known as a state humanities council. We are a partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities, a federal agency that supports the public humanities in public life in America. We do that work here in California. Our council gives grants in the humanities, many to public libraries. We also do our own live events and programs, often about civic life, writing, literature, the human experience, history of all forms in museums and other exhibition settings. Very broadly, we participate in all those spaces all throughout the state, all year round. We've been around since 1975, when the National Endowment for the Humanities was founded, and we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. This program, Library Innovation Lab, is now also in partnership with Khalifa Group. You might have heard of Khalifa. They do this work nationally, and it's being supported by a new grant from IMLS Laura Bush 21st Century Library Program. So we have some national partners and a funder coming on board this year so that we can expand this program past California and into other states, into other libraries in America. So Library Innovation Lab is, as I mentioned, it's a professional development experience. So every year, 10 librarians or library staff, you do not have to have your MLS, you do not have to be, a full librarian, although many people are. Library staff come together in a group of 10 and acknowledge that they want to better serve the immigrants, migrants, diverse audiences coming from other parts of the world and their communities. And together we give you resources and trainings and mentorships from Eric, Patty, and others in cohorts to develop public humanities programs at your library branches that are responding to what you discover about your community in the program. So it's a phased experience that Felicia will detail for you. But I think the headline is this is a program that helps you better welcome new audiences to your library through events and community programs. Felicia, over to you.
Hey, thanks so much, Kirsten, and hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to hearing more from you and working with you as we move along. Maybe go to the next slide, Kirsten. Yeah, on this one, just want to break down in a little more detail some of the program objectives and goals that Kirsten already referenced. So we know that libraries, first and foremost, we know that libraries are already doing a lot to support immigrants and immigrant incorporation into American society, American culture, American life. So this program is really intended to supplement the wonderful work that we know all of you are probably already doing in your libraries by building on that through public humanities programming. So what we're really trying to do here is to really support libraries becoming successful public humanities programmers using collaborative design processes and practices that involve immigrants and helping to plan and implement public humanities programs that reflect immigrants' needs, interests, values, and concerns. So over the years, 8 years actually, that we've been doing this program here in California, we've seen librarians and library staff people employ many different kinds of strategies of user-centered design, things like needs assessments, community research, different types of co-design practices, all of these rooted in the foundational principle or value of empathy. That is approaching programming from the standpoint of what the end user needs, not what the programmer needs and wants. So generally speaking, we see that the projects that make use of these kinds of collaborative design practices are really successful, both in the short term as well as long term, in building strong relationships with immigrant communities. And then, as Kirsten said, the third goal here is really related to professional development. So this program relates to the importance of experimentation, innovation, and process work, which is partly why we use the term lab in the title. And kind of as programmers ourselves, we know that it's hard to find time and resources to think outside the box when you're coming up with programs. So this experience is intended to give you the opportunity to develop new skills by designing and field testing a short-term, small-scale public humanities project during the grant period through working with others in a learning community. And again, based on our experience over the last 8 years, we've seen that this kind of professional development promotes short-term benefits. People really enjoy working with each other and getting to know their colleagues over the course of the year, as well as really advancing long-term professional growth and confidence. And Patty and Eric will share more with you about their own experience as we go along. Okay, so just a little overview of the program structure. The first few months, we start very early in the year. We have an initial orientation meeting to bring everybody together, virtually, of course, to get acquainted. Everyone build a shared sense of understanding about what the program goals and activities are going to be. We have some trainings. We have opportunities for you to break out and do activities. We always start with a pretty intensive design thinking workshop in which you get to experiment with some design thinking activities to build confidence around that particular type of approach. And then over the next couple of months, we have monthly meetings, that are really focused on further provision of skill development activities, enabling cohort members to share your work in progress, what you're learning about your community, getting feedback on your developing program ideas and concepts. And then that's all leading towards coming up with a project plan by kind of the beginning of summer, June, is when we are hoping that everybody will have finalized a plan and a budget for the activities that you're going to be providing to your communities during the second half of the year. So the whole second half of the year is really that second phase of implementing, doing your public programming with immigrant communities, possibly other folks in your communities. Every person's project is going to be different, but you have up to almost 6 months there to actually implement your programs. And then the final phase of this, of course, is since we're a humanities organization, we place a lot of stress on reflection and analysis, monitoring of your work as you go along, what you're learning. So we do have a pretty intensive reflection and assessment period at the end. We will bring everybody back together for a final gathering where we share and celebrate everyone's accomplishments, reflect on lessons learned and what you might take from your experience during this year into your work more generally. And we do ask you to submit a final report, which we'll discuss a little later in the webinar. Okay, so just quickly, what California Humanities will provide to everybody who's participating in this program, a framework for, this collaborative learning and experimentation experience. So structured meetings, usually we have homework assignments, regular types of communications, check-ins, coffee hours, individual consultations, things of that nature. Um, we're very fortunate to be able to offer you support from experienced past participants who will be serving as mentors. So folks who have gone through the program and developed skill with these particular kinds of activities will be actually at your side the entire step of the way, helping you as you go along. This experience carries with it a $6,000 grant that goes to your library, not to you as an individual, but to your library or your fiscal sponsor if you're using a friends group or a library foundation. And that's really to support you during the entire process of planning and implementing your project. We do ask that, again, your library or your fiscal sponsor match the grant funds by the end of the year. And, that's usually fairly easy to do when you take into account staff time, the value of library resources that are contributed to the project and things of that nature. And then we can also provide you an additional stipend of up to $200 for project-related travel. If you want to go visit a colleague's program or possibly attend a conference, make a presentation, anything of that nature. Okay, so the cohort experience working with 10 other librarians over the course of the year with our mentors and of course us staff is really at the heart of this program. Each year's cohort draws a different mix of libraries and librarians, rural, urban, suburban. Participants have ranged from seasoned managers, library directors, to library staff people who may not be credentialed or who are just starting their careers. And again, over the past 8 years, participants have told us that the opportunity to meet with and establish relationships with colleagues from many different regions, backgrounds, and life experiences is one of the most beneficial elements of this program. So this year, we're really excited to be able to broaden our cohort pool beyond California to include librarians from other parts of the country as well. So what will you be doing? This slide just gives you a snapshot of, 6 of the amazing projects, amazing 80 plus projects that the library folks who have been part of this program over the last 8 years have done. So we'll share more with you about that, or Patty and Eric will share more with you, and you can check out descriptions of past projects by going to our website. Okay, and then finally, this is just sort of a graphic representation of some of the major outcomes and accomplishments that Library Innovation Lab has achieved over the last 8 years, creating hundreds of enjoyable, accessible, relevant, and meaningful programs, providing welcoming experiences for immigrants, connecting folks across cultural divisions, whether they're generational or related to culture, bringing immigrants together with longer-term residents and community, enabling immigrants to really share their experiences in authentic ways, and of course, building the capacity of public librarians to do this important work that's so essential to maintaining and strengthening the social fabric of our country and our communities.
Okay, well, we have a quick beat here. If anyone has a question right away, what's up next will be Patty and Eric's presentation, so you can see this program in action. Okay.
Yeah, nothing in the Q&A box so far. So let's keep moving ahead. And if you think of something, pop it in there.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you all for making time to make this webinar. It's very dear to our hearts, so we're happy to share. And I am a librarian. My name is Patty. I'm a librarian with the City of San Leandro, and I work with adult services. My project was called Belonging. It was kind of a play on words because we were interested in helping our community feel like they belong, the immigrant community, and woven into the fabric of our community was the title of my project in the City of San Leandro. Just a little overview on San Leandro. It's a suburb in the East Bay with a population of over 90,000. And we have a very diverse community as well, with Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders coming in at 36%, Caucasians at 31%, and the Latino community coming at almost 30%, 27.6%. We also have African American community that is vibrant in our city. And we just wanted, and it's also a very blue collar community as well. So we also just wanted to take note that this was happening. My program was in 2021, and that was kind of in the middle of the pandemic. So we were just at that point in the fall of 2021 when I was working on my events, slowly opening and releasing and sort of just lifting up our COVID regulations and stages. So we had been closed for over a year because we could not gather. So at this junction in this point of the pandemic, it was almost like a really big need for us to find a way for people to gather. And the next slide, please, Kirsten. Thank you. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the programs that me and my coworkers designed to offer to the community at this very precarious moment in time. Just at the top, I'm going to go clockwise, but at the top, I had a chef talk with Popoca's head chef, Anthony Salguero, and this took place during Hispanic Heritage Month. One of the groups that I wanted to highlight in my project was actually the Salvadorian community, which was, we were very big on celebrating Mexican culture because that's a huge community in San Leandro, but we decided to focus on another group. And Anthony is actually a Salvadorian chef. And it was interesting. You can see him outside here. This was a bar called Low Bar in Oakland. He was kind of a migrant pop-up chef who was cooking outside of bars in the open spaces during the pandemic. I had invited him to San Leandro to actually give a talk. We had tasting boxes because of the regulations. We could not just serve inside and have people eating together, but we offered boxes of his tamales. And then we actually, because we had catering with him, we had invited him to talk. The humanities portion of this project is to engage the community in talking. So he did talk about his roots in El Salvador and how he met with the elders there and traveled back and forth in order to learn their techniques in cooking. And it's just interesting because when I invited him, I had to pivot to have him meet with me outside of the library because of COVID restrictions. And he gave a talk there just because, and he was happy to talk about his techniques and his connections and roots as well. Also, it's just interesting because as he was a migrant, he was kind of like displaced and moving around. He actually did finally get a brick and mortar called Popoca. And it is, that means in Nahuatl, smoked. And he does have a space now. And coincidentally, it's right by the Cal Humanities office in Oakland, in the Chinatown area, historic Chinatown. Going around, we have also another event. It was a performance that we had in which we had invited Carectan. It was a traditional Filipino-American dance troupe who performed on a stage. Everyone was masked, as you can see, but I was able to experiment with this because we invited them to have a portion in which they taught people how to dance. It was very, very instrumental in inviting the community to connect again. Elders were really happy to be able to communicate with these dancers and then reflect on how these were dances that they danced when they were young. And you can see over there, that's my supervisor who got into it too, Armando, who actually tried tinikling, which was a dance with the sticks. Going down underneath, we also had very quickly Canyon Sayers Roots at the bottom. I was able to experiment with her as well. And she offered a teen zine program. And I had never worked with the teens, so that was my opportunity to branch out. And finally, we have Liafa Tuita Taumpeau. She was a Tongan mental health specialist who actually helped out with actually helping with mental health wellness issues in December. Okay, and finally, my last slide. Thank you. And I just wanted to talk about the lessons that I learned really quickly. The art of listening and conversing is just really instrumental throughout this whole process. It helps with the building of community within your library, as well as helping to understand our community members as well. I learned to step away from making everything so perfect. I have a perfectionistic outlook before this, and then I'm learning now to allow for mistakes. And you won't find a more supportive group than our LIL staff, Kristen and Felicia, who are always just encouraging us and making us watch our bandwidth. And finally, we cannot do everything, but we can experiment creatively. I just wanted to note that we had a whole conference about self-care. We just have to allow ourselves to just make the mistakes and then just try what we can within our bandwidth. I just wanted to let you know this is Javier Zamora, author of Solito and Unaccompanied. It's a book of poems. I could not invite him to our event because of COVID restrictions. And he was in Arizona actually, but I was able to connect with him and his agent and staple his poetry to, I got the rights to staple his poetry to our tamal boxes. That's just an example. And just how I did it is not the only way. Eric is next, and he will talk about how he pivoted in his situation in Long Beach to really honor and serve just one group. I did a number of groups, but he focused more on the Cambodian community and honoring their traditions. Eric?
Thank you so much, Patty. Beautiful presentation. And thank you so much. Exactly. My experience at the Library Innovation Lab was also wonderful. And the staff, as Patty mentioned, to second what Patty was saying, Kirsten and Felicia are so helpful and positive and really help us, again, check our bandwidth and just very encouraging. So it was a wonderful experience. And as Patty mentioned, but before I get into our presentation, just to pivot back to our intros, my name is Eric Cardozo, and I am a senior librarian at the Billie Jean King Main Library in Long Beach, California, Southern California. So thank you so much for being here today. We're really excited to share our experiences with you. The title of our project was Kamai Kamal, and in talking to the Cambodian community, every year in April, Long Beach hosts a Cambodian New Year festival, and I was fortunate to go down, and we tabled at the event, and I got to meet a lot of wonderful folks. And a lot of people that I spoke with at the event let us know that they wanted to celebrate their community and be seen, but also and really use their voices to talk about their experiences growing up in Cambodia, and a lot of folks' experience in with Khmer Rouge, and so how they've sort of made it here. And then also inviting everyone to learn about the story. Everyone, even outside of their culture, they wanted to share those stories. So that's where the title Kamai Kamal came from. And our program dates, I was in the cohort 2022, and then our project dates were November through December of 2022, so 2 months. And yeah, again, it was a really great experience. Next slide, please, Kirsten. And just a little information about our demographics. Going into it, again, Long Beach is also a very diverse community, as is San Leandro. And so we really, we're looking into, which demographic we wanted to celebrate for this particular plan. And again, Long Beach is known as Cambodia's capital of the United States. We are the second largest population outside of Cambodia. Almost 20,000 Cambodian descent, 4% of the city's population, said to be second largest population of Cambodian immigrants outside of Southeast Asia. And then we also have Anaheim Street, which is the corridor as Cambodia town since 2007. There are many restaurants, jewelry shops, grocery stores on Anaheim. And then we also were offered a grant before, a few years ago, to go to Cambodia and purchase Khmer books to be added to our collection. So we do have a really large collection of Khmer books and resources at our Mark Twain branch, which is again in the middle of our Anaheim corridor. And doing that, one of the ways we started was we would go to some of the jewelry shops and some of the restaurants and talk to folks, talk to business owners, in addition to the festival that I mentioned, to sort of get an idea as to like what programs we can bring, what we want to know, like learn, doing a little bit of research, having those conversations, making those connections. And that was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And it really helped shape Kamai Kamal for us. And again, taking a step back, as Patty mentioned, and really leaning in on our professionals and, to help us plan the program. Next slide, please. And so when we were planning it, we really wanted a little bit of an element, for every program that included storytelling, dance, art, music, writing, and film, and really celebrate the Cambodian community through all of these wonderful elements. So throughout the program, we had about 10 different programs scheduled. We sort of broke it up with a Kamai Kamal intro kickoff event And then we did a concluding ceremony in December. The kickoff event included an author discussion. And then we also had a chef come in, and I'll have some more photos in the next slide that kind of breaks it up. But we had a chef also come in and do like a food demonstration. And we had some music and just why Long Beach. You know, we had authors come in and talk about, you know, why Long Beach. There's a book written, a really good book about, you know, the Cambodian sort of community moving here to Long Beach and how that all came about with the United Cambodian Community. And there were some discussions there too. Next slide, please. And so this sort of breaks up some of our programs. For one of our programs, we had a Khmer story time. And so as you see on the top left, that's Brandy from Khmer Kids. And she has her own business where she comes in and she reads to children in Khmer, and she brings in several activities and games for the kids as well to participate in. And she asks them questions and really gets them involved. So that was really nice to see. And then we had Modern Apsara Company, which is a dance workshop, as you see on the top right. That's Mia Lath. And what she also did is she invited families to come in and do some dance techniques and movements with them as they were doing. So they did a few movements first, kind of taking the audience through the storytelling through hand movements and what all of it represents. And then again, as I mentioned, she invited some families to come up and participate. And it was really nice to see. We had a little girl come in, she was probably 2 or 3. And right after, Mia had showed how to sign flower in the dance, and she repeated that saying. She said flower, and you can see really just the visibility, you know, making an impact for this little girl and her family. So it was really nice to see. And then at the bottom left, we had an author talk with Mei Li Tao. She wrote An American Dream with Sprinkles. And she was the great niece related to Ted Noy, known as the Donut King. So for those of you who have seen the documentary, The Donut King, who was responsible for sponsoring and leasing hundreds of donut shops to Cambodian refugees. So she did a talk, and then she invited her mom to also talk about her experience growing up during the Khmer Rouge. And a lot of folks who experience that obviously have intense PTSD from that traumatic time. But having her tell her story allowed folks to share their story. It like uplifted, and really like people were just raising their hands, standing up and talking about their experience. And it really opened up like hearts, and it was a nice like connection with the audience. And then we asked everyone in the audience to write just recipes. So they did their own little menu where they would write recipes that their families would cook regularly growing up, that meant something to them in their culture. So that was a follow-up activity that we did. And then bottom right, Krong, that was the book that was launched by Chef T, Vizot Torek Uk. And he wrote a book again called Krong, and he came and did a food demonstration and again talked about what all that meant and how it like, you know, how it was passed on generations in his family. He talked about how it was when his mom used to make it, and you know, he got emotional talking about it, and it was just again a really beautiful experience. He brought all the spices and really just showed how to mix and blend everything, and it was really awesome to see that. Next slide, please. And then again, just some highlights. Building partnerships, that was great, because now with the building of partnerships and again, opening your heart to really listening and being empathetic, which is a big part of Library Innovation Lab, as you know, it really allowed us to build those partnerships. And now a lot of times they'll contact us and they want to do more programs, and vice versa. You know, it's a back and forth, and we really have worked hard to continue Khmer Kamal community member engagement. Again, appreciation spoken from members of the community. That was always wonderful to hear. And the children engagement, the story time, button making. We had someone translating folks' names in Khmer so they can wear it as a button. And that was a highlight. And then we were able to highlight our Khmer collection. And then also just planning additional programs for the future. So that's been something since this 2022 program we've been able to continue to do, and it's been wonderful. And I've taken so much away from this, like Patty had mentioned. And also just one little tip, you know, it's wonderful, and we talk about self-help and mental health, and it's really important to you know, engage your staff with this initiative also, and working with your team and really leaning in on the experts and your businesses to help you, so it doesn't all fall on you, you know, so not feeling the pressure to plan so many programs, but you know, really taking time to plan one, you know, big program that has a lot of thought into it, and again, a lot of voices from your community. And that's basically it. And thank you so much for being here. We really, really appreciate it. We're excited.
Thank you, Eric and Patty. That was great. If anyone has questions for Eric and Patty, we have a little time now. Meanwhile, Brett, I think we got one question here.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because maybe this prompts us to speak a bit about the design portion, right? So this person is asking, may we press forward on a tiny project that we are hoping to create? And we might be putting the cart before the horse a little bit there, right?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question for sure. Really the idea of Library Innovation Lab is you enter wanting to learn about your community first, hear what they say they need, hear hear from, a range of advisors. So you'll be going, into your neighborhoods, into the stores, into your relationships in your community and meeting people you haven't met before and asking what they would participate in at your library, what kinds of humanities, arts, performances, experiences would get them there. So it's possible that you already know some of this about your community and you are ready to launch events that would engage them. But we hope that anyone entering the program remains open-minded and malleable in these conversations, right? So you might know some things about the project you want to launch in this program, but you're still prepared and expecting to learn a lot more before you design your programs. So I will say, if you don't have to be a total blank slate, none of us, if you're attracted to this program, you might have had some conversations recently or seen some cool programs that you want to replicate. That's normal. We have someone in the cohort now who, for instance, really knew that she wanted to serve Ukrainian and Russians together at the same programs, and she knew she wanted to do embroidery. But she ended up shifting around or adding to like a number of her programs with additional arts and humanities forms. So yeah, that's how I would put it. Anyone else want to answer this question? It's such a good one.
Just to talk off of Kristen's point, I do agree. Like, I mean, Eric and I, when we were preparing for this, we were kind of, Eric, you can give your viewpoint, but a lot of us are so geared in the library industry to come up with things quick and fast, and like lots of pressure to get the events like set up and ready, because I even today, even a supervisor just wanted a deadline on something happening in April, and I was like. So I do echo what Kristen and Brett are saying, in that we want you to take the time to lean into the process and not so much put pressure on yourself to think up something really quickly. We really do emphasize the whole listening. I mentioned it in my segment of really listening and learning more about your community first. I'm sure you have an excellent idea. We're like really happy that you're excited to push forward. But let's take a moment and just kind of absorb what the community needs and wants from us. What we think sometimes is not always what it is until we start talking to people. Would you agree, Eric?
Yeah, 100%. And even going into it, I had an idea, but then when, as I mentioned earlier, the festival that I attended for Cambodian New Year, that really helped me make this decision to, pursue or Kamai Kamal. And it was so helpful to really sit there and just talk to folks. And as you mentioned, Patty, beautifully, just listening. That's so important. And it really is nice because there's no rush to plan the programs. It's like, you really listen, you really think about how you want to do. Sometimes you have an idea for something that you want to do, and then it may not work out exactly as you were thinking initially, and it might change into something else, but it's all about the community and celebrating taking their response and putting it into these wonderful programs. So yeah, I 100% agree with that. Great question.
Yeah. I think I think what everybody said is great. And I would just say, yeah, maybe treat your idea as a hypothesis, right? You have a hypothesis about what would be a great program. Well, use this opportunity to check it out with the people who are actually going to be coming to your programs or being part of your project. But yeah, I think nobody, like Kirsten said, nobody is a blank slate. We all have ideas in the back of our head. But the important thing is to validate those ideas, to check them out, to get additional input from community members, so that you're really shaping a program that is really responsive to the people that you want to engage with.
Thanks for that. So I have one more very quick question, and we need to catch up on time a little bit and get back into the slides. So a really quick question is, do we have to present our program at the branch that we are working at, or can we do it at another one of our branches? Yes, you can do it at one or several of branches in your system. All right, so now let's move on into some nitty-gritty points about applying through our grant portal. The first slide that I want to show you is a timeline of events that is in your guidelines document. So if you saw the guidelines, this should not be new to you. But again, this is just the timeline of how things are going to happen this fall, as well as if you are awarded a grant with this program, how things that will progress during the rest of the year. So you can apply right now. The application is online and available, and the deadline is Monday, January 6th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, in case you are in a different time zone, 5 p.m. Pacific sharp. All right. We will announce the awards by the end of January, and then your research and design will begin right away in February. There are some key dates that you may want to tentatively, block off of your calendar now. And then for the spring, the 2-day workshops, as well as another one in the summer with your presentation of plans. So it's a good thing to have these dates, know them ahead of time. The key thing right now is making sure that your application is submitted by January 6th. So the next big piece in my world of grants management is who can apply, who's eligible. So a public library must serve as the applicant library. If desired, sometimes there's less red tape. The applicant can also be a library affiliated organization, like a friends group, a library foundation, which acts as a fiscal sponsor. What that means is your 501c3, that affiliation, that friends group or that library foundation, they would have to be a federally recognized 501c3 organization, a nonprofit at the federal level. They could act as your fiscal sponsor. They would receive the funds on your behalf, and then they would expend the funds to you when needed. A librarian or a library staff member that has direct programming responsibilities should be the person that's acting as a project director. We don't necessarily want somebody in a library director or a library supervisor role. We need someone that is hands on the ground and does public programming as part of their job responsibility. And then the authorizing official, whether that's the library director, if you're part of a big branch, it might be someone downtown, or if you're using a fiscal sponsor, the executive director of your friends group or foundation would be the one that would need to sign the certification at the end of the application, and B, if you are awarded, sign the grant agreement. So this entire process is online. So if you start at our webpage, calhum.org, at the very top purple banner, it says Grant Portal. There is a link on this slide that leads you to the same place. If you have applied with us before, use that same username and login, or there will be a register box in the corner. A complete application consists of a web form that you'll need to fill out, uploading your resume, and uploading a questionnaire to the librarian, to the project director on, you know, what they hope to accomplish, why they want to do this project. And we'll talk about that more in detail in a little bit. So on this slide here is the top of our webpage, like I said, calhum.org. And then in the top, there is a grant portal, which leads you to the bottom screenshot. Like I said, if you've been registered, if you've applied before, whether it's Library Innovation Lab or any other one of our grant programs, you can use your existing login or hit the register box if you are new to us. Once inside the portal, the red circle where it says programs at the top brings you to like our main menu of all the different grant programs we offer, and then you will see Library Innovation light up, and if you hit that green more button, it goes to a longer description of what our Library Innovation Lab program is. If you go to the next slide, Kirsten. And then it will show you where the apply button is. Now, once you start a new application, this is kind of what the inside of the portal looks like. The section in the middle with the 4 tasks and the half green circle, those are the tasks that you need to complete in order to submit this application. So as you work on those 4 tasks, the green circle will fill in all the way when it's done. You have to complete each of those 4 tasks, and then you will be able to submit, you know, once those 4 tasks are complete. So this is just a sample of, you know, any old web form that you would find online, right? There's some fill in the blanks, there's some check boxes, maybe some drop down boxes, you know, your name, address, phone number, email address, yada, yada, yada. So again, a simple web form that you will fill out. At the end of each form is either save and continue or mark as complete. Like I said before, you'll want to mark each task as complete as you go. Once you've completed the first task, you can hit back to application to kind of see all those 4 tasks again. And then the circles on the left are just showing you again those 4 tasks that you need to complete. So your navigation at this point is on the left-hand side of that screen. One thing you'll need to do is we want to make sure that everybody in the library, you know, knows that you're applying for this. Who needs to know? So for instance, maybe you have a supervisor in between yourself and the library director, or maybe just the director themselves. The form will ask those kinds of questions to make sure that we get approval from the right folks. So one thing that you'll need to do is you'll need to add that or use that add collaborator button to your library director. Like I said, maybe it's someone even downtown that needs to sign off on your application, certifying that the information that you've provided us is all true and that they approve that you are submitting a grant application at this time. So when you hit that add collaborator button, it sends that person an email. It says that you want help finishing your application. You can explain to them that they need to review it and sign it at the end. You won't be able to notice that submit button is grayed out. You won't be able to submit until your library director or whoever is acting as the authorizing official for this certification has approved your application submission. So you can see in this next screen, one of the common questions that we get is, I've completed one of my tasks. Doesn't matter which task. I've completed one of my tasks, but it's wrong. I need to edit it. I need to change something. I put in somebody's phone number wrong. I attached the wrong attachment. And sometimes it's tricky to find that edit button. So you'll in the right top corner of this screenshot, you'll see what looks like an ellipsis, 3 dots. That is the submenu where you will find the edit button in case you need to edit anything. The next slide, there's two things. The yellow circle preview, if you want to, I should start with, look in the middle. All three of those boxes in this example are the green check boxes are on. The green submit button is lit up, meaning it's ready for you to submit. You've completed all the necessary tasks. So that yellow circle around the eyeball where it says preview, that's an optional step, but that's if you want to download all of the contents to have for your records. That's where the place to do that is. That's another common question. And then circled in green is where the final submit button is, which will light up green once all of your tasks are complete. So now just a couple of tips using the grant portal. So first of all, Google Chrome does work best. Safari works pretty well. Firefox works pretty well. Microsoft, what's the old name called? Internet Explorer is no longer supported, as you know, most computers have actually phased that out on their laptops and desktops too. And this is definitely something that you want to do on a computer, on a desktop, on a laptop. I can guarantee you try to do this on an iPad or on a Chromebook, it will give you a headache. Use a real computer to fill out this form, to upload the attachments and whatnot. Plan ahead for obtaining signatures. Like I said, you'll need to use that Add Collaborator button to get your supervisor, your library director's signature on there. Don't wait till the last day, because you know that email is going to go to junk mail or spam, and then they won't see it, and the deadline is at 5 o'clock. And you will receive that confirmation email that it was submitted. So that's kind of your fail-safe that everything went through. And I think now, let's see, I think Felicia is going to talk about the project director experience and interest form.
Okay, thanks, Fred. Okay, yeah, as Brett said, this is a really important piece of the application. And unlike most of our other applications, if you're familiar with California Humanities or probably other state council grant programs, we're not asking you to provide a detailed program plan or budget up front. So that's kind of a change from the usual practices with grant making. So as we've explained, your program plan is something that we are wanting to see you develop as a part of your participation in this project, if you are selected as one of the cohort members. So instead of that, at this stage, we're really much more interested in learning more about you, the prospective project director, why you want to participate, what skills, knowledge, and interests you will be bringing to the project and to the cohort itself, as well as what you're thinking about how this project might benefit your library, your community, especially the immigrants that you want to engage with. So what we ask you to do is answer this series of questions, follow the prompts, so tell us why you would like to participate in this program, what's interesting about it to you, how you imagine it will benefit you, your library, the community, both immigrants and the broader community. We'd like to know a little bit about the community in which you work. So tell us, as Patty and Eric did kind of in their presentation, something about, the demographics, the culture, the history of your community, and what issues and topics are currently, at the kind of top of minds of folks in your community, especially anything that relates to immigrants or immigration. Then we do ask you to kind of identify, at least tentatively, what immigrant community or communities you'd like to work with. As you can see from Patty and Eric's examples, you can either choose to focus in really intensively on one particular group, or you might pick two. As Kirsten gave the example of one of our current project directors who wants to work with Ukrainian and Russian immigrants in her community, or as Patty did, you might want to if you have a very diverse community, you might want to work with, 3, 4, 5, or even more immigrant groups in your community. That's up to you to determine. So that's something that we do ask you to think about, pretty carefully before you apply. So it's good that we're starting now in October, and you have until January if you need to think about it. Okay, so next slide. Next slide really goes to kind of your experience. So we're just curious to know if you've ever developed a project kind of from scratch based on a needs assessment or other kind of community research, surveys, conversations, anything of that nature. We're curious to know what your level of experience is with the public programming. It's not required that you be an expert programmer by any means, but that's just something that we're curious to know so that we can kind of factor that in as we're thinking about assembling a cohort. And finally, we'd like to know a little bit about what kinds of human and material resources do you think you might be able to draw on as you do this project? So who's going to be part of your team? Are you, do you already have folks at the library that you would want to bring into this project? Are there community members that you are anticipating working with? And this can also relate to funding, because remember that you do have to match the $6,000 grant by the end of the grant period. You don't have to know that now, but you just have to kind of have a good idea about where you're going to come up with that match. And it can be in kind, contributions of library staff time, volunteer time, donations of supplies and materials, anything that anybody at the library, the community is going to be contributing to your project. Okay, so that's the form. Then in addition to that, we ask you to upload just a short resume, no more than 2 pages. Just, tell us a little bit more about your professional experience and goals, education, any special training you've had, and, really highlight things about you personally that you feel would make you a good candidate for this project. It could be travel, interest in a particular ethnic or immigrant community, language skills, community or volunteer service. If you have particular artistic or creative inclinations that you want to explore as part of your project, or technical skills, like maybe you're a writer, maybe you're a filmmaker, something of that nature. Maybe you're a dancer, it could be anything. But just, tell us something about your own personal background that shows your interest, inclination, and aptitude to do this kind of work. Okay. So just a little bit about selection criteria. We have a very limited number of people who can participate in this. Unfortunately, we wish it were more, but we've learned over the years that 10 is kind of an optimal size. So, we're really just looking to curate a cohort of folks who are really enthusiastic about this, the possibility of doing this kind of collaborative work, who are curious about experimenting with new ideas, new approaches, and of course, looking for a cohort that in some way represents the kind of geographical and cultural diversity of our country. Okay, over to you, Kirsten.
Thank you, Felicia and Brett. Just a few last details, and then we'll take a final question break. If you apply for this program, as was mentioned, the deadline is January 6th, but you can start anytime, including today. You'll know By the last week of January, if you are accepted into the cohort, you'll sign a grant agreement, and then we will publicly announce your awards in February of 2025. You can share it with your community and put it as a press release. That's the timeline. The way the money works is as soon as you're accepted and return your grant agreement, you get the first $1,000. Then it's phased. The second installment of funds, the bigger chunk of change, the $5,000 that will allow you to pay your performers and, hire delicious catering and all of that, that comes after you submit your project plan. Sounds scary, but really it's just a, narrative essay about what you're planning to do with some timeline information and a budget. Once you give us that in June, you'll get the second batch of funds. Then there'll be a final report at the end, a whole year after you started the program. So not to worry about that quite yet. But do take this opportunity if you're going to apply, if you're serious, have a meeting if you can with the person who manages grants and finances in your system. Let them know what you're trying to do and what kinds of payments you might need to make. We'll give you resources for having this conversation if you join the cohort. But it's always a good idea to start talking with the person who, writes checks when you're dealing with grant funds. Some of you might have already worked with grants before and know about this. You can use these funds for pretty much anything related to a program, food, performers, stipends for youth. You can buy books, you can buy food, you can buy goodie bags. Really what you can't do is buy alcohol, and you also can't really do scholarship work, although that's a complicated topic. So talk to us if you have something that sounds like a scholarship. And you also need to plan to spend all your funds by the last day of what we call the grant period, aka December 31st, 2025. So really think of 2025 as your year of expenditure, and then it's all wrapped up by New Year's. What we expect from you is to be committed, emotionally and professionally to designing, creating, and evaluating some new programs that serve immigrants at your library. We expect that you'll actively come to every meeting, barring, an emergency. We really think it's so important for this small group of 10 to have each other's faces and voices and support at every meeting. So think, take a look at that schedule of meetings, make sure you can make them all before you apply. And you'll also need to match your grant funds, kind of a scary term, really. It just means that you need to secure at a minimum in-kind donations or time of from yourself and your staff on the level of about $6,000. It's usually no problem for anyone in the cohort. The amount of hours you'll spend on these projects, as you know all too well, those of you who do programs, quickly adds up. As does, donated gift cards or donated space from your library, even all of that can count towards your match. And then lastly, just to comply with some, homework pieces we ask you to do, like then letting everyone know you've gotten the grant and crediting us for the funds, putting in reports about the status of your project and things like that, that we will break down for you step by step that you don't need to know all about right away. Well, that is the end of our spiel. So I want to thank you all so much for coming out for this webinar. I know it's really hard with your desk shifts and all the million things librarians are constantly up to get this time to step away and sit through a webinar. We're here. Do you still have questions? We will stay on to answer them.
Here's a couple of very quick eligibility questions. Can the library be attached to a public school/college?
As long as it's part also of a public library system. If it's a joint use library, that's fine. But not if it's just a school library or a college library. It needs to be public library.
And similarly, does the performing arts library of a college qualify? And that would be no.
No, sadly. But look at our other grant programs.
Definitely look at quick grants, look at project grants. And if you want to strike up a partnership with your local public library system and have them be the recipient of the grant funds, you also talk to us about that.
there's any last questions, go ahead and pop them in the Q&A box.
Yeah, and if you prefer an individual advising session, Felicia and I are more than happy to set up a call. So just send us an email, we can schedule something. Okay.
Let's
I
go to
think
our
that's it.
contacts. We have a contact info slide.
Thank you, Brett. Yes. So there's that. And Patty also shared her number and email in the chat. Eric, would you mind if I put your email in the chat too? We'll
No
actually,
problem. Thank you,
better
Kristen.
yet. Okay, thank you. We'll send a follow-up email with these contacts as well for Patty and Eric. Okay, thank you. And Beth, thank you for putting California Humanities newsletter link here. That's the best way to find out about happenings with Library Innovation Lab and other grant funding opportunities. You can also follow us online on social media. We're always posting. Well, thank you everyone so much. Such a pleasure to connect with you. And thank you to our presenters today, Felicia, Brett, Eric, Patty, and thank you, Beth, for all the tech support behind the scenes. Hope to talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you.